So, you are not your mind. Now we're going to explore what is the mind, because it can take you years to see it. And I mean, it can take you a very, very long time, and you can possibly go throughout your entire life and never know that you are not your mind. Now, to some people, they may have some awareness when suffering comes, specifically mental suffering in the mind space or thought space or thinking space, if you want to call it that. And the thoughts are repetitive. Maybe someone told you something, and then constantly your mind is replaying the same story again and again and again, and it never ends. It just goes on and on and for years and years and years. And then there's also the other situation where you become so unconscious that you start having this dialogue that goes on in the mind with this person, whoever told you anything. You start fighting with them in the mind. So you have your mind that is one piece, right? And it has created now two. And now the two is there's you, and then you are talking back and telling the other person something in your mind, and then you imagine a response on that person, and then that person is telling you. So your mind has created a separation, and then this game kind of goes on and on and on and on. It never ends. Until one day, if you pay enough attention, you tend to see this very clearly. Now, can meditation be a useful tool for allowing you to become aware that you are not your mind? Right? Can it be a useful tool? Now, this depends. It depends on what your meditation is, what the practice is, how you are using meditation as a way to become aware of the mind. So, the one quick way which you can quieten your mind is by simply observing it. So, for instance, you have a thought that comes in, or you have a story or a dialogue that's, your mind's going to fire up, and you're going to get lost into the whole entire drama. If you able to just observe without feeding the energy and your thinking, rather, with that story, just simply observe, and you'll notice that the mind kind of quietens down. You can sometimes get to a point where it becomes still, or it just stops. The chatter just stops. So if you're doing that as a practice in your meditation, after some time, while you're sitting, it gets a bit easier, and then you're able to experience more states of maybe higher consciousness, or you may be able to experience maybe get really good at quietening down the mind. But then the problem arises where now in your daily life, maybe you go to work, or you go to school, or you go anywhere, but it involves movement from one point to another point. And there we go again, the mind is back in its way. So it's kind of pointless, it feels, to a spiritual seeker or a person on the spiritual path, because they've been spending all this time trying to meditate and stuff, and you can spend years doing this, and then still fall back into the same patterns. Now, a more effective way to actually deal with this is to not really sit and meditate all the time. Specifically, if you have been doing meditation, for years, and it hasn't made much of a difference. So this part of the video is more for you, right? So you need to allow something called an integration process to happen. So you got to learn how to kind of integrate naturally meditation in your daily life all the time, 24/7. Right? Maybe you might not be able to do it 100%, but as time goes by, it will definitely get better. So just be observant of everything. So simply just observe. Do whatever you have to do in your life and just simply observe everything that comes up in the mind space while you're doing anything. And this, what I just mentioned, is much more effective because when you are interacting with somebody or you are going throughout your daily life and life throws challenges at you, that is where the deeper levels of what we call as samskaras, so these are the unconscious patterns that are within the self structure that tend to come up most of the time in dealing with people, or certain challenges may creep up in life, or things just go wrong, events and whatnot, the list goes on. But in those specific moments, if you are able to observe everything that arises from the mind space, just know it's just a story. It may not necessarily be true what the mind is saying. Most of the time, the story that the mind is generating is something based off your past data that does not exist anymore, and trying to use the past to project and calculate how things should be and where you should be and how you should be into the future, and you are in the present, right? And most of the time there's nothing really happening to you in the present. Maybe in a few cases, maybe physical torture or damage to your body, that's different. But most of the time it is just the mind creating a whole lot of jargon and a whole lot of stress and confusion for you as a person experiencing this so-called existence of life. So what you can do is just simply observe whatever arises and don't resist anything. So let's just say, for instance, if you feel a certain emotion that comes up within your body because of the external event, right? Don't resist that feeling. So when you resist the feeling, you kind of push it down. So there's something that's coming up for you to feel, so it can be released from yourself. So if you feel it fully without resisting it, and you need to try this and find out for yourself and experience this, most specifically experience this, you'll tend to notice that whatever comes up from within yourself, if you just allow it to come up from within yourself and just kind of passes out of you. So you're not basically trying to push something down within yourself. You're not trying to, you're trying to allow whatever is there to be released. Because if you, let's say, for instance, you reject or you push down a certain feeling or emotion or, something from within the body that it feels unpleasant. So something may arise, emotion or whatever, and then all of a sudden you kind of push it down. And then you'll be met with something else in life that will manifest in a different form or different factor. Maybe the same situation may come up again, and then again it comes up again, and then you wonder, you push it down again, and then you start to wonder, why do the same things keep happening to me over and over and over again? And that's the reason why. That could be one of the reasons why we have these cyclical patterns. And then you notice that once these samskaras from the deeper layers of the unconscious rise to the surface, and you kind of allow and you feel into it fully, have a full direct experience of it, it tends to transmute, and then it leaves you with less resistance in the body and less resistance in life. And then you start to see a real change happen in your physical reality, and then also your internal reality as well, how you are within yourself. Now, there can be some situations where they can be very overwhelming and stuff, and it may be very difficult for one to process and go through. And then one also needs to look at, okay, there is spiritual advice, and then there's also medical advice that you can get, maybe sitting with a psychologist and stuff, and it can be very useful for an individual. And the key in life is not to resist anything that may come up from your experience, because the more you resist life in its natural flow, so life, you can look at it as a river that's kind of flowing, right? And your mind is kind of the boulder or the rock that is kind of blocking the stream. So when you become identified with your mind, you tend to suffer, basically. You tend to suffer a lot. And when you start to see that you're not your mind. So what do I mean by seeing that you're not your mind? There's a difference between having a little experience for a short span of time. Maybe you just notice, okay, there's thoughts and stuff. I'm not those thoughts. I'm not the mind, right? That's one, right? That's fine. That's the beginner stage. Then there's the actual seeing that I am not my mind. And when you do see that you're not your mind, what actually happens in that situation is you tend to realize that what you are, which is the awareness, right, of everything that comes and goes, part of the changing phenomenon of the world, that itself, the whole thing, the whole experience, everything that has happened and has not happened, the whole entire experience was all not you that was experiencing. It was all not you that was directing everything, controlling things, choosing this, choosing that. The whole entire show of life, your whole entire life experience, you realize, I have not been doing anything. I'm not the doer. And when you start to really see it, you have that kind of a glimpse, that true glimpse, then you really know in that moment. It may not last for a very long time, but at least you had a good enough glimpse, you had a strong glimpse that you are not your mind. And that can be a very good starting point moving forward, because then now you're starting to transcend that mind that has limited you in your experience of life. And it can be very freeing, and it can also be very shocking, because it's not something that, I think, when people hear this, they think that, or they look at enlightenment or whatever, they tend to see that, oh, it's some exotic experience, or it's something magical, or it's nothing like that. And the whole entire thing about what enlightenment is, and all the questions you have, and the reason maybe you watching this video, is all the mind. It's 100% all the mind. The mind has made you clicked on the video. The mind has made you go on YouTube. The mind has been trying to find answers, and you realize that it was never really you. It was never really you searching for anything. All your goals, all your aspirations, from the time you were in school till the time, you graduated, you achieved certain things in your life, all that was not you. You never even had a desire in the first place to begin with. So this is something that, it does require some effort in the direction. There has to be some will that's there at the basis of this. Can it happen where you see that you are not your mind just by not doing anything? It is possible. It is possible. It has happened to um, maybe a lot of people. One specific person, it was Eckhart Tolle, where he was going through tremendous amount of suffering, and then in that suffering there was this deeper realization. But the question you should be asking yourself is, do you want to put yourself, or do you want to have an experience where you go through a tremendous amount of suffering to see this, of what I'm saying? Or do you prefer to find this out by yourself through your own will? Because life will create challenges, life will create opportunities, it will create a whole entire circus to show you this if you don't kind of move in this direction. So you may feel that, okay, it may sound like, I'm like trying to force you to go into this direction. No, I'm not. So it feels like that there because the mind is thinking that it has to do something. So that the whole entire video is trying to point you towards the mind. There is a transmission in Zen where the Buddha himself, right? He is holding a I think it's a sermon. It's called a sermon, or you can call it a satsang. So it's basically a gathering, a spiritual gathering of spiritual seekers wanting to hear an enlightened person basically speak, and they want to get something, right? So the Buddha is obviously a very well-known historical figure that gave enormous amount of spiritual teachings. He really dug deep into and penetrated consciousness itself on a very deep level. And because of that, there's been so many people today and in the past that have benefited from those direct teachings and from those direct pointings. So he gathers the whole group of people, and then he sits there, and he's already done the talking. He's already explained everything, and he's reached a point where these people are not getting it. So what he does is he grabs a flower like this. Well, not maybe this exact flower, but he grabs a white flower, and he holds this flower like this. He holds this flower without saying anything. And out of that, disciples, all of them, now they're sitting around an enlightened master. He's done it. He's achieved he's achieved everything. And then they're all looking at him, and this is his teaching. He's not saying anything. He's just holding the flower up. And the first time I heard about that teaching, the mind was just like, what is that? How is that a spiritual teaching? And through a Zen master, I was able to receive that, the wordless transmission through that. And in that, you realize that the Buddha was never 2,000 years ago. He was available right now, in this moment. He gave the teaching in this moment, like not the moment that went by, but this current moment here. And it's still very alive, and I've been on this path for a very long time, and your mind. So in order to be able to receive subtle teachings um, from from these great spiritual teachers of mankind that has produced, to be able to receive something so profound and deep and stuff, it does take some, if you want to call it, inner work, some effort in the direction, because there has to be a certain level of preparation in the body, you know if you use, and the reason why I say that is because if you are very used to a lifestyle that is very unconscious, and that's the norm, it can, a very powerful, simple thing in life that comes towards you, that can change your entire life, it kind of can pass you by, and you never know what, even in the simplest forms of life's expression, how these, the teachings, it may not necessarily be through a person, it may not necessarily be through any kind of being, but if you're able to keep yourself in a certain, openness and a certain level of, with an intention of moving in the direction of trying to penetrate deeper into the spiritual truths, and trying to find out, a little bit more about, just the normal life itself, which everybody lives. If you're open, if you have that little bit of open space and you kind of maintain that there, a lot of things can, your whole entire life, the way how you perceive life itself can completely change. And there is some traditions in spirituality where there is a lot of doing, right? So there's a lot of doing, so you're required to do maybe yoga, chanting, you're required to do a whole bunch of things. It doesn't matter, there's the endless amount of things. And there's a certain sage, his name is Patanjali. So Patanjali, he looked at the Yoga Sutras, and he classified yoga into 8 limbs. So he condensed it in a certain factor, in a certain form, and said, just do these things, yeah, and then eventually this will be an outcome, which is samadhi. And if you look at yoga, like how it is today, and some traditions, there's an extreme amount of dedication, extreme amount of effort that has to be put there. And the reason why this is true, because if you've been on the spiritual path for a long time, and you've been doing a lot, like you've been doing a lot and a lot and a lot, and maybe sometimes some profound deep inner realization happens, or maybe maybe something very subtle happens, or maybe nothing at all happens, right? There's many scenarios, but if you continue doing, there's a certain part which I've noticed in the self structure. That part is like a driving mechanism. It's like a desire to become enlightened, or a desire to know, or whatever it is, but essentially it is a very strong willpower or desire. If you've been doing and doing and doing and doing and doing, eventually at a point in your spiritual journey, right? It's funny because we're calling it a journey, right? But the journey is, you see, when you look at a journey, there's a start and then there's an end point. The journey, when you realize what you are, there's actually no start and end. It was always here. So you actually go like full circle, right? And then you come back. So that's exactly what it is. So it's like you're trying to go, you try and do, and then you kind of realize the pointlessness of doing, and then you stop doing, and then you realize. And that's how the Buddha became the Buddha. He became the awakened one. So hopefully this words have kind of pointed you in a not a direction, but for lack of words, we're just saying this. Yeah, hopefully it has helped you point, you know, instead of kind of focusing too much on the external, kind of like settle something within you that kind of helps you on your journey.